The Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller family. John Davison Rockefeller, Sr., 1839 to 1937. John Davison Rockefeller, Jr., 1874 to 1960. John Davison Rockefeller, III, 1906-78. Nelson Rockefeller, 1908-79. Lawrence Rockefeller, 1910. Winthrop Rockefeller, 1912-73. David Rockefeller, 1915. John Davison Rockefeller, 1839 to 1937. Grandfather of former Vice President Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller, and David Rockefeller, head of the Chase Manhattan Bank, was the richest man of his time. He started out in 1859 as a produce merchant, turning to oil in 1865, at the age of 26. In 1870, when Standard Oil of Ohio was incorporated, Rockefeller controlled 21 out of 26 refineries in Cleveland. By 1871, Standard Oil was the largest refining company in the world. In 1879, he controlled over 90% of all refined oil sold in the country, with 20,000 producing wells, and 100,000 employees. In 1884, he moved his main office to New York City, and by 1885, Standard Oil virtually controlled the entire oil industry in the United States, and had set up branches in Western Europe and China. The Rockefellers and Rothschilds have been partners ever since the 1880s, when Rockefeller was able to get a rebate on each barrel of oil he shipped over the Pennsylvania, Baltimore and Ohio railroads, which were owned by Kuhn, Loeb and Company in 1888. Details concerning the Rockefeller Oil Trust began to leak out in the newspapers. In Ohio, at the time, a company within the state could not own stock in a company in another state, which occurred when Rockefeller bought out smaller companies. Using the secret trust, which was established in 1879, the trustees for the companies that had been taken over, the 37 Standard Oil stockholders, and Standard Oil of Ohio, relayed all out-of-state subsidiary stock to 3 clerks from Standard Oil. In 1882, the 3 dummy trustees, 42 Standard Oil stockholders, and Standard Oil of Ohio, transferred all its stock to 9 trustees, who were controlled by Rockefeller. In March, 1892, the Ohio Supreme Court ordered Standard Oil to withdraw from the trust, after Ohio and other states outlawed trusts. Rockefeller countered by moving Standard Oil to New Jersey, who allowed their corporations to hold stock in out-of-state companies. Thus, Standard Oil of New Jersey became that holding company. In 1889, Rockefeller helped establish, with a grant of $600,000, the University of Chicago. He promised to support the school for 10 years, which he did, donating $34,708,375. In 1901, he incorporated the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, now Rockefeller University, with a grant of $200,000. In 1903, he established the Rockefeller General Education Board, which he donated $42 million to, within a 2-year period, and $129 million in total. The board was organized by Fred Gates, the frontman for the Pillsbury Flour Company. In 1909, the Rockefeller Sanitation Commission was established, to which he gave $1 million. Rockefeller's goal was for Standard Oil to be the world's only refining company, and to that end, it was alleged that he blew up a competitor's refinery in Buffalo, New York. He owned large blocks of stock in quite a few newspapers, including the Buffalo People's Journal, the Oil City Derrick, in Pennsylvania, the Cleveland Herald, and the Cleveland News Leader. He had contracts with over 100 newspapers in Ohio, to print news releases and editorials furnished by a Standard Oil-controlled agency, in return for advertisement. He owned several New Jersey and Ohio state legislators. Representative Joseph Sibley, of Pennsylvania, was president of the Rockefeller-controlled Galena Signal Oil Company, and in 1898, Representative John P. Elkins, also of Pennsylvania, accepted a $5,000 bribe from Standard Oil. In 1904, Senator Bois Penrose of Pennsylvania received a $25,000 bribe from Rockefeller, and Senator Cornelius Bliss received $100,000. Others who received Standard Oil bribes: Senator Matthew Key, P.A., Senator Joseph B. Foraker, O., Senator Joseph Bailey, T.X., Senator Nathan B. Scott, Senator Mark Hanna, O., Senator Stephen B. Elkins, W.V., Rep. W. C. Stone, P.A., and Senator McLaurin, S.C. President William McKinley, through Senator Mark Hanna, was a pawn of Standard Oil and the bankers. The rebates Rockefeller received from various railroads were actually kickbacks. These rebates made it possible for him to keep his prices lower so he could bankrupt his competition. He said, "Competition is a sin." And quote. Standard Oil also made kickbacks, in the form of stock, to railroad people, such as William H. Vanderbilt, who received stock without contributing any capital, as did various bankers who lent money freely to Standard Oil. Willie Wingfield, a Rockefeller messenger, sold evidence of Rockefeller's bribery to William Randolph Hearst's New York American, for $20,500, and Hearst revealed the information at election time, in an attempt to get the Rockefeller stooges out of office. In 1905, an expose by Ida M. Tarbell, called The History of Standard Oil Company, which came on the heels of an 1894 book by Henry Demarest Lloyd, called Wealth Against Commonwealth, began to turn public opinion against Standard Oil. Robert M. La Follette, Sr., in a speech to the Senate in March, 1908, said that fewer than 100 men controlled the business interests of the country. However, a few years later, through an analysis of the Directory of Directors, it was discovered that through interlocking directorates, less than a dozen men controlled the country's business interests. Most notable were Rockefeller and Morgan. In March 1910, Senator Nelson Aldrich of Rhode Island introduced a bill of incorporation for the Rockefeller Foundation, but it came at a time when there was an antitrust suit against Standard Oil, and the bill was withdrawn. On May 15, 1911, Standard Oil was found to be in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, and the U.S. Supreme Court ordered, in a 20,000-word decision, the breakup of Standard Oil of New Jersey. The court said that Standard Oil wanted to establish a monopoly in order to drive others from the field and exclude them from their right to trade, and that 7 men in a corporate machine have conspired against their fellow citizens. For the safety of the Republic, we now decree that the dangerous conspiracy must be ended. Standard Oil was forced to dissolve into 38 separate companies, including Standard Oil of Indiana, Amoco, Standard Oil of Ohio, Sohio, Standard Oil of Louisiana, Standard Oil of New Jersey, Exxon, which is one of the largest corporations in the world, controlling 321 other companies, including Humble Oil and Venezuela's Creole Oil, Standard Oil of New York, Socony or Mobil, and others such as Continental Oil, Conoco, Atlantic Richfield, Arco, Gulf, Phillips 66, Texaco, and Marathon Oil, which were also Rockefeller-controlled companies. Rockefeller owned 25% of Standard Oil of New Jersey, which meant that he now owned 25% of all 38 Standard Oil subsidiaries. In 1914, the congressional record referred to Standard Oil as the shadow government, and as the extent of its holdings became known, its value tripled. In May 1913, after 3 years of congressional opposition, the New York State Legislature voted to establish the Rockefeller Foundation, which was located in the Time Life Building, to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world. However, a 1946 report stated that the challenge of the future is to make this one world. The endowment to establish the foundation totaled $182,851,000, and was given in securities, enabling the foundation to disperse over $1 billion, even though it is only third in total assets compared to the Ford and Johnson foundations. In 1899, with an estimated wealth of $200 million, Rockefeller retired. But, only in regard to being involved in the day-to-day operation of the company. He didn't officially retire until 1911, when he resigned as president of Standard Oil. He had become America's first billionaire, yet when he died, he only left a taxable estate of $26,410,837.10, which after federal and state taxes were levied, left about $16 million. The remainder of his fortune had been left to surviving relatives, $240 million, his sons, $465 million, and his foundations. Rockefeller, said to own 20% of American industry, between 1855 and his death in 1937, gave away nearly $550 million. In 1855, when he was 16, he gave $2.77 of his meager earnings to charity, 1856, $19.31, 1857, $28.37, 1858, $43.85, 1859, $72.22, 1860, $107.35, 1861, $259.97, 1865, $1,012, 1869, $5,000, 1871, $6,860, 1879, $29,000, 1880, $32,865, 1884, $119,000, 1891, $500,000, 1892, $1,500,000, 1893, $1,472,122, 1907, $39,170,480, 1909, $71,453,231, 1913, $45,499,367, 1914, $67,627,095, and 1919, $138,624,574. he gave $182,851,480 to the Rockefeller Foundation, $129,209,167 to the General Education Board, $73,985,313 to the Laura Spelman and Rockefeller Memorial Fund, and $60,673,409 to the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. John D. Rockefeller, Jr., 1874 to 1960, who was married to Abby Aldrich, daughter of Senator Nelson Aldrich, according to a February 1905 McClure's Magazine article, was part of a corrupt political machine. He continued the charitable tradition of his father. He spent over $40 million to buy up land and convert it to national parks, donating it to the public. The most prominent of these parks is the Jackson Hole Preserve at the Grand Teton National Park in northeastern Wyoming. In 1926, he reconstructed the colonial town of Williamsburg, Virginia, spending $52.6 million to restore 81 colonial buildings, and rebuild 404 others from original plans, on their original foundations. Over 700 modern homes were torn down in the 83-acre area to bring the 18th-century town back to life. He also built 45 other buildings, including 3 hotels to serve the public, and planted gardens. In 1929, he began building the Rockefeller Center in New York City, a complex of 14 buildings, at a cost of $125 million, which was to surpass the stature of the DuPont's Empire State Building. The Rockefeller Empire is run from the 55th and 56th floors of the RCA building, at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Rockefeller was quoted to have said, "So it may come to pass that someday, no one will speak of my country, but all will speak of our world." He pushed his sons into 5 different areas of influence: John III, into philanthropy; Nelson, into government, 4-term governor of New York, and vice president under Ford; Lawrence, into business; Winthrop, into oil, also 2-term governor of Arkansas; and David, into banking, chairman of the Chase Manhattan Bank and director of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. The Rockefellers, undeniably the richest family in America, increased their fortune by marrying into other wealthy and influential families. By 1937, there existed an almost unbroken line of biological relationships from the Rockefellers through one half of the wealthiest 60 families in the nation. Percy Rockefeller, John Jr.'s cousin, married Isabel Stillman, daughter of James A. Stillman, president of National City Bank, and William G. Rockefeller, another cousin, married S. Elsie Stillman. Ethel Geraldine Rockefeller married Marcellus Hartley Dodge, which linked Standard Oil and National City Bank to the $50 million fortune of the Remington Arms Company and the Phelps Dodge Corporation. J. Stillman Rockefeller, grandnephew of John, Sr., married Nancy C.S. Carnegie, the grandniece of Andrew Carnegie. Their son was named Andrew Carnegie Rockefeller. Edith Rockefeller, John Jr.'s sister, married Harold F. McCormick, an heir to the International Harvester Company fortune. Their son, Fowler, grandson to John, Sr. and Cyrus McCormick, who invented the reaper, married Fifi Stillman, the divorced wife of James Stillman. Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller was married to Mary Todd Hunter Clark, the granddaughter of the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. They were later divorced. Winthrop Rockefeller married Jeanette Idriss, a hotel and theater heiress, and John J. D. Rockefeller IV, one of John Jr.'s grandsons, the family's only Democrat, 2-term governor, and later U.S. Senator, of West Virginia, married Sharon Percy, the daughter of Senator Charles Percy, who had been one of the Senate's most influential members. Altogether, the Rockefeller family had been joined in marriage to the Stillman, Dodge, McAlpin, McCormick, Carnegie, and Aldrich family fortunes, and its wealth has been estimated to be well over $2 billion. Some estimates even claim it to be as high as $20 billion. To compare, John Paul Getty, Howard Hughes, and H. L. Hunt had fortunes between $2 to $4 billion, and the DuPonts and Mellons had fortunes between $3 to $5 billion. Ever since the TNEC hearings in 1937, which convened for the purpose of finding out who was controlling the American economy, the Rockefellers had been able to avoid any sort of accounting in regard to their vast assets and holdings. That ended in December 1974, when Nelson Rockefeller was nominated to be vice president. 2 University of California professors, Charles Schwartz and William Domhoff, circulated a report called Probing the Rockefeller Fortune, which indicated that 15 employees working out of room 5600 of the RCA building had positions on the boards of almost 100 corporations that had total assets of $70 billion. This was denied by the family, and in an unprecedented event, a family spokesman, J. Richardson Dilworth, appeared before the U.S. House of Representatives Judiciary Committee during the 1975 hearings into the nomination of Nelson Rockefeller to be Vice President of the United States to document the family's wealth, which he said only amounted to $1.3 billion. Part of the Rockefellers' financial holdings consists of real estate, foremost being the 4,180-acre family estate at Pocentino Hills, north of New York City, which has 70 miles of private roads, 75 buildings, an underground archives, and close to 500 servants, guards, gardeners and chauffeurs. They also maintain over 100 residences in all parts of the world. Besides investments held in personal trusts, the family also holds stock in numerous companies. Some of their major holdings: Chase Manhattan Bank, American Telephone and Telegraph, AT&T, Eastman Kodak, IBM, General Electric, Texas Instruments, Xerox, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, Monsanto Chemical, Aluminum Company of America, Alcoa, Armor, Bethlehem Steel, Chrysler, DuPont, General Motors, International Paper, Polaroid, Sears, and Roebuck, Standard Oil of California, Chevron, Standard Oil of New York, Mobil, Standard Oil of Indiana, U.S. Steel, International Basic Economy Corporation, International Harvester, Quaker Oats, Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel, iTech, Federated Department Stores, Walgreens Stores, Transcontinental Gas Pipeline, Consolidated Edison, Anaconda Copper Company, General Foods, Pan American World Airways, Colgate-Palmolive, E.I., DuPont and Amores, W. R. Grace Incorporated, Corning Glass Works, Owens Corning Fiberglass, Cummins Engine, Hewlett-Packard, R. Donnelley & Son, Dow Chemical, Teledyne Incorporated, Warner Lambert, Westinghouse, International Telephone and Telegraph, IT&T, Motorola, S. Kresge, Texaco, National Cash Register, Avon, American Home Products, Delta Airlines, Braniff Airlines, Northwest Airlines, United Airlines, and Burlington Industries. The financial core of the family fortune included the Chase Manhattan Bank, Citicorp, which grew out of the Rockefeller-controlled First National City Bank, the Chemical Bank of New York, First National Bank of Chicago, Metropolitan Equitable, and New York Mutual Life Insurance. By the 1970s, Rockefeller-controlled banks accounted for about 25% of all assets of the 50 largest commercial banks in the country, and about 30% of all assets of the 50 largest life insurance companies. The Chase Manhattan Bank, however, remains the supreme symbol of Rockefeller domination. Founded in 1877 by John Thompson, the Chase National Bank was named after Salmon P. Chase, Lincoln's Secretary of Treasury. It was taken over by the Rockefellers in a merger with their Equitable Trust Company, whose president was Winthrop Aldrich, son of Senator Nelson Aldrich. In 1955, it merged with the Bank of Manhattan, which had been controlled by Warburg and Kuhn, Loeb & Co., the oldest banking operation in America, founded in 1799 by Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, which had 67 branches in New York, and $1.6 billion in assets. Although it was only the sixth largest bank, over $98 million in assets, it was the most powerful. In 1961, the Chase Manhattan Bank Plaza was built in downtown Manhattan, at a cost of $125 million. It is 64 stories high, with 5 basement floors, the lowest of which contains the largest bank vault in the world. They had 28 foreign branches, and over 50,000 banking offices in more than 50 countries, and had a controlling interest in many of the largest corporations in America. Some of those that were listed in the Patman Report: American National Bank and Trust, Safeway Stores, Reynolds Metals, White Cross Stores, J.C. Penney, Northwest Airlines, Eastern Airlines, TWA, Pan American World Airways, Western Airlines, Consolidated Freightways, Roadway Express, Ryder, Wyandotte Chemicals, Armstrong Rubber, A. H. Robbins, G. D. Searle, Sunbeam, Beckman Instruments, Texas Instruments, Sperry Rand, Boeing, Diebold, Cummins Engine, Bausch, and Lomb, CBS TV, International Basic Economy Corporation, Adressograph Multigraph, Aetna Life, American General Insurance Company, Allegheny Ludlam Steel, National Steel. Men from the Chase Manhattan's board of directors have also sat on the boards of many of the largest corporations, which have created a system of interlocking directorates. Some of these have been Allegheny Ludlam Steel, U.S. Steel, Metropolitan Life, Travelers Insurance, Continental Insurance, Equitable Life Assurance, General Foods, Chrysler Corporation, Standard Oil of Indiana, New York Times, Cummins Engine, Burlington Industries, ABC TV, Standard Oil of New Jersey, R. J. Reynolds Tobacco, Scott Paper, International Basic Economy Corporation, International Telephone and Telegraph, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, Anaconda Copper, Allied Stores, Federated Department Stores, R. H. Macy, Colgate-Palmolive, Bell Telephone of Pennsylvania, Consolidated Edison of New York, DuPont, Monsanto, Borden, Shell Oil, Gulf Oil, Union Oil, Dow Chemical, Continental Oil, Union Carbide, and SS Kresge. Chase also owned or controlled the Banco del Commerce, with over 100 branches in Colombia and Peru, Banco Continental, with about 40 branches in Peru, Banco Atlántida, with 20 branches in the Honduras, Nederlandsche Crediet, with over 60 branches in the Netherlands, and Standard Bank Group, with over 1,200 branches in 17 African countries. Through a subsidiary, the Chase Investment Corporation, they owned a sheep and cattle raising operation in Australia, hotels in Puerto Rico and Liberia, a ready-mix concrete facility in Brazil, a cotton textile mill in Nigeria, a paint factory in Venezuela, a steel mill in Turkey, a petrochemical plant in Argentina, a bus line in the Virgin Islands, and bowling alleys in England. Our tax dollars, through the Export-Import Bank, International Monetary Fund, Cooperation for Overseas Investment, and the International Stabilization Fund, are used to give aid to other countries, some who were communist. Millions of dollars were given to Yugoslavia, including hundreds of jets, many of which ended up being given to Castro in Cuba. Chase and the Export-Import Bank financed 90% of the $2 billion loan to build the Kama River truck complex in Russia, which was equipped with the world's largest industrial computer system, with the capability of producing up to 200,000 10-ton trucks a year. A U.S. government official who toured the facility reported that V12 diesel engines were being produced there, and said, "There is only one vehicle in Russia that uses that type of engine, and that's a Russian battle tank." Besides the production of trucks, they also have the capability of producing jeeps, military transports and rocket launchers. The repayment period for the loan was 12 years, with a 4.5-year grace period. The loan repayment was guaranteed by the U.S. taxpayers through government agencies like the Overseas Private Investment Corporation and the Foreign Credit Insurance Association. Chase Manhattan and the Bank of America lent about $36 million for the Bechtel Corporation to build and equip an international trade center in Moscow, which had been arranged by Armand Hammer of Occidental Petroleum, a personal friend of Lenin, and son of one of the founders of the U.S. Communist Party. The Export-Import Bank and other private American banks also put up all but $40 million for a $400 million fertilizer plant in Russia. In 1967, the International Basic Economy Corporation, with 140 subsidiaries and affiliates, owned by all 5 Rockefeller brothers, run by Richard Aldrich, grandson of Senator Nelson Aldrich, and Rodman Rockefeller, son of Nelson Rockefeller, and a CFR member, and Tower International Incorporated, headed by Cyrus S. Eaton Jr., a Cleveland financier, who was the son of a man who started his career as secretary to John D. Rockefeller, later making his own fortune, joined to promote trade among the Iron Curtain countries. In 1969 the IBEC announced that N.M. Rothschild and Sons of London had become a partner. This partnership built a $50 million aluminum production center in Russia, and announced a multi-million plan for Russia and other Eastern European countries, which included the building of large hotels in Bucharest, Sofia, Budapest, Belgrade, Prague, and Warsaw, rubber plants, and a glass plant in Romania. In addition, Tower International made an agreement with the Soviet Patent and Licensing Organization, Licensentorg, to promote Soviet-American trade, which up to that time, was done by Amtorg Trading Corporation, the official Soviet agency in America. This gave the Rockefellers and Eatons complete control over what technology was sent to Russia. David Rockefeller, the head of the Chase Manhattan, and the family patriarch, controls many secondary interlocks which contribute to the family's power and influence. Some of these have been Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, Honeywell Incorporated, Northwest Airlines, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company, Allied Chemical Corporation, General Motors, Chrysler Corporation, International Basic Economy Corporation, R. H. Macy & Co., Mutual Benefit Life Insurance Company of New York, American Express Company, Hewlett-Packard, Exxon, Equitable Life Assurance Society of the U.S., Federated Department Stores, General Electric, Scott Paper, AT&T, Burlington Industries, Wachovia Corporation, R. J. Reynolds Industries, U.S., Steel Corporation, Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, May Department Stores, Sperry Rand Corporation, and Standard Oil of Indiana. On July 9, 1968, the New York Times reported on a study by a House banking subcommittee, headed by Representative Wright Patman of Texas, which said, "A few banking institutions are in a position to exercise significant influence, and perhaps even control, over some of the largest business enterprises in the nation." Just as the Rockefellers have these extensive interlocking connections, other leading bankers, the other 107 directors of the 12 Federal Reserve banks, and members of the Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, and Bilderbergers, also have similar connections to these and hundreds of other major corporations. Now you can see how these like-minded individuals have been able to control American industry and business. Though the Rockefeller Foundation is the primary foundation of the family, there are many others operated by them, such as the Rockefeller Family Fund, Rockefeller Brothers Fund, Martha Baird Rockefeller Fund for Music, Laura Spelman Rockefeller Memorial Fund, John D. Rockefeller III Fund, Rockefeller Institute, Standard Oil, Indiana, Foundation, SO Education Foundation, American International Foundation for Economic and Social Development, China Medical Board, Agricultural Development Council, Government Affairs Foundation, Sealantic Fund, overseas contributions to religious charities to strengthen and develop Protestant education, to which John Rockefeller Jr. contributed $23 million, Jackson Preserve Incorporated, Council on Economic and Cultural Development, and the Chase Manhattan Bank Foundation. There are some who believe that the Rockefellers may run close to 200 trusts and foundations. Prior to their appointments, Cyrus Vance, Secretary of State under Carter, and Dean Rusk, Secretary of State under Kennedy, were both presidents of the Rockefeller Foundation. You have seen how powerful the Rockefeller family is. Now let's look at how the Rockefeller Foundation has used its money. Through interlocking directorates, the foundation controls the Carnegie Endowment and the Ford Foundation. While the Carnegie Endowment deals with education, as it relates to international matters, the Rockefeller Foundation concentrates on education, as it relates to domestic issues. It financed and influenced 7 major policymaking agencies: Social Science Research Council, who explored the means of controlling people through scientific methods, such as mass media; Russian Institute of Columbia University, who developed methods of conditioning Americans into accepting a merging of the Soviet Union and America under a one-world government; Council on Foreign Relations, National Bureau of Economic Research, who worked closely with the Federal Reserve Board, Public Administration Clearinghouse, in Chicago, Brookings Institution, and the Institute of Pacific Relations, who was responsible for planning the communist subversion of America. The Rockefeller Foundation provided over $50,000 to fund the Building America textbook series, which played up Marxism, and sought to destroy traditional concepts of American government. Over 100 communist organizations contributed material, including the writings of over 50 communist writers. The California legislature said that the books contained purposely distorted references favoring communism. The foundation contributed money to the pro-communist New School for Social Research in New York City, and funded projects for the Communist Staff Southern Christian Leadership Conference, led by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Rep. Cox said that the Rockefeller Foundation has been used to finance individuals and organizations whose business it has been to get communism into private and public schools of the country, to talk down to America, and play up Russia. The foundation also funded the Kinsey Report, which heralded a new era of sexual immorality. The purpose of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund is the support of efforts in the U.S. and abroad that contribute ideas, develop leaders, and encourage institutions in the transition to global interdependence. In 1974, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund gave grants to ACLU Foundation, $45,000, Atlantic Institute for International Affairs, in Paris, $10,000, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, $60,000, Columbia University, $9,500, Council on Foreign Relations, $125,000, Foreign Policy Association, $20,000, International Institute for Strategic Studies, in London, $5,000, NAACP, $145,000, National Council of Churches of Christ in the USA, $10,000, National Urban League, $100,000, Trilateral Commission, $50,000, UN, Association of the USA Incorporated, $25,000, United Negro College Fund Incorporated, $10,000, and the U.S. Conference for the World Council of Churches Incorporated, $2,500.